So let's talk about the Jerami Grant deal first, and then we will transition into Detroit's offseason and where they go from here within that conversation, because I think that that's just going to be the easiest way to do this. Please, James, I still don't totally know what all of the second round obligations are with this trade. So
I'll pull it up.
I'm going to give you the floor. Please explain all of the details in this deal that see Jerami Grant going from Detroit to Portland for a 2025 Milwaukee first round pick.
Yes. So there's that. Detroit will also pick swap this year. So they have 46. They will now have 36 in the second round in Thursday's draft, while also getting back its own 2025, which Portland had. And then the Pistons also get the more favorable of the Blazers and Pelicans second round pick in 2026.
So when I first glanced at this deal and just saw the 2025 Milwaukee pick, which is not going to be very valuable. Giannis still exists. There's no way that Bucks team is going to be outside of, or is going to be in the lottery, right? This is a top 4 protected pick, I believe.
So, yeah.
But it's going to be like a pick in the 20s in 2025, basically. I do think there is real value moving from 46 to 36 in this draft. Mm-hmm. It's a small thing, but it's not valueless. Obviously they get the 2 other second round picks, or at least they get 2 additional second round picks, I guess. So when I look at this deal, I think that it's probably commensurate in value with like the 17th pick in a draft, maybe like the 18th pick in a draft. That's still probably a bit low in comparison to what people thought Jerami Grant's value was. But when I look at it, it just seems pretty obvious that Detroit here decided to move this pick into Portland's trade exception, which means that they clear the cap space that they need in order to chase free agents. And how this deal works out for them, I think, is just kind of incomplete at this point. It's almost not worth, this is not a trade to give immediate grades on. Right. We won't know the grade until July 5th or whatever it feels like, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, in terms of what they got back in a trade, 7 never seemed on the table for me. Like maybe early on when Portland was seeming desperate, and I knew, to my knowledge, I know Portland had a list of guys that they wanted with the number 7 pick. I know Jerami was on the list. He was 5th, 6th to my knowledge. I never thought 7 was in play. I looked at teams like Cleveland at 14 and Atlanta at 16, I believe 16. And like that's possible, just given where they are as organizations. They might not need those picks. But I was never as high on Jerami's value as maybe other Pistons fans were, just because of some of the stuff that was thrown out. And I played into it throughout the months, like just trying to get a gauge, because you look at what Aaron Gordon was traded for, and you think Jerami Grant now is pretty much on that level of where Aaron Gordon was then. But I think Jerami Grant's extension, maybe I would imagine maybe teams have hesitation there. I don't know if maybe that's why, but yeah, I reported the story. And again, I believe I'm being told the truth. This is the best offer Detroit has had, concrete offer that Detroit has had for Jerami Grant, even dating back to last trade deadline. So I think what you said is important. Essentially, they're moving off money without taking money in. This is a team that went into the summer with arguably the most cap space, around $30 million. They can get up to $56 million if they don't bring back like a Hamidou or a Frank Jackson. And they're probably going to, I think they bring those 2 back, at least one of them. So you're kind of looking at mid-40s. So listen, Troy Weaver was brought in here for 2 things. Well, when he took over Detroit, 2 things were clear. This team has been struggled financially, not in terms of cap space, for quite some time. And they struggled in the draft. And in less than 3 years, Troy has, they have 40-something million in cap space, and that's with 11 million dead money still on the books. In Deadman, and I can't even remember who else. That's
Zaire Smith, and I believe Josh Smith as well. Has this last year on the books, maybe?
Yeah.
Or no, it's DeAndre Jordan.
DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
So that in less than 3 years, that has been fixed. And then we go to the draft. He's done 2 drafts, and he has 3 first-team or 3 all-rookies. Sadiq, Isaiah, Cade, and Isaiah Livers, I think, is going to be a player in some capacity too. So 4 guys, and the verdict's still out on Killian. Hasn't looked great, but it's still the verdict's out. But I think 4 guys that I think they're probably excited about going forward. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very quick turnaround in terms of where the Pistons have struggled the most over the last decade to having a position where they actually have different avenues they can walk down for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and I think this is the benefit of having Cade now, right?
Yep.
Like, you have your guy. You are now building around a star. The hardest thing to do is to find the star. You have him. Now you just try and make it work around him. And in terms of Grant, let's talk about that first real quick. Like, Jerami Grant is a valuable starting caliber player in today's NBA. He is switchable defensively. I think across all forward positions, you can have him on a bigger wing creator, which I think is actually something that has intense value in the playoffs that we haven't gotten to see Jerami, perform in Detroit since he's moved into being more of a primary scorer. But I would venture that in Portland, we probably see him step back a little bit in terms of being like a primary scorer at the end of the day. At least in comparison to where he's been in Detroit.
And so, he has that, I think him and Dame are very close too. So I don't think there's going to be I don't think he'll be afraid to take a backseat to a guy he's very close with, and the pecking order is well defined there instead of how it was in Detroit early on before Cade kind of got rolling.
Now, them moving forward, they're in a spot where they have to make a decision on Anthony Simons this summer, which I'm pretty interested in. If I was Detroit, I would chase Anthony Simons a little bit, to be honest. If I was, and now I'm Portland, I have to make a decision on Anthony Simons. He's going to cost $25 million a year, I think, almost unquestionably, given the way that he closed the season, given what his upside is, given his age. That's going to be a big money deal. We're talking about people worrying about Jalen Brunson getting 25 million, 30 million a year. I think people's eyes are going to fucking balloon out of their skull when they see what Anthony Simons is going to get, given how few people know really how good he is now as a pull-up scorer and shot creator. They have to make a decision on picking up Josh Hartsteele. They have to make a decision on re-signing Yusuf Nurkic. I think that their moves now make more sense to be able to move forward with Dame, with Nurkic, with Hart, with Simons, now that they have Jerami Grant. And I think additionally, because they have acquired this very good player for a good asset, not a crazy good asset. They didn't have to give up number 7, for instance.
And while we're on it, just really quick, Haynes, and this has been out there, Haynes reported that Portland's going for OG with number 7. So if you want to add that into the equation, I don't know if that gets them, but
incredibly skeptical that they are able to do that. I think it would cost OG plus other stuff, or I think it would cost 7 plus other stuff for OG.
I'm with you.
It now allows them, I think, to take a swing at number 7, which, from what I gather, is what Joe Cronin has always been the big proponent of in the draft. They have obviously always been a team that goes for crazy athletes. They take Anthony Simons, they take someone like Greg Brown. Neil Olshey throughout his past has been publicly on the record saying when he was in charge there that, we don't think there is any rookie who can come in and help us while we're a playoff team. So we are just going to take the best player available or the highest upside available and go from there. They took Gary Trent, for instance, as a freshman, one and done. So I think they're going to take Shaedon Sharpe is where I'm at.
It seems like the most logical landing spot for me when I think of where Sharpe goes. And it sounds like he's been, I don't think Detroit is, I think he's down the list for Detroit. And I don't see the Pacers taking him. And so I thought it started his range. The Pacers could, but it started. I think it started. It started at 7 for me with Sharp.
Yeah, and this isn't me having intel on this. Like, don't aggregate this. This is me. This is me inferring based on the moves they've made, plus Joe Cronin being more of an upside guy, plus Mike Schmitz having been on the record that he wants. Let's see here.
Something happened.
Did something happen? Oh no, it's just the Haynes thing saying that Portland is in pursuit of OG and Anunoby for number 7. Yeah,
dude, I'm on edge still. Like, I haven't come all the way down. You can't scare me like that.
I would be stunned if that happened. Same. Like, that's bizarre to me. I mean, literally, like Dan Tolzman, the scouting director for the Toronto Raptors, like after a scrum, someone got him on camera saying like, we'd essentially be hard pressed to find someone like OG at number 7 in this draft. So
yeah,
it would take an exorbitant amount more, I would think, for that deal to get done.
I'm with you.
Getting back to, I'm like at the point now where I can't even remember what we were talking about.
We were talking about Portland, and we kind of transferred to Portland after talking about Detroit. Yeah.
So Portland now, I think that what they do just, we were talking about Shaedon Sharpe. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This isn't me aggregating this. This isn't me, or like, don't aggregate this. This is me reading the tea leaves. Mike Schmitz is like on the record on Woj's podcast saying that like he really would love the swing for Portland with Shaedon Sharpe at number 7 before he went to go work for Portland and before that was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
So
speaking of tea leaves really quick, do you think the Grant trade all but solidifies Keegan at 5 or no? If the Kings don't do it?
No, I think that this was probably more about they got a good deal for Grant. They opened up the space they want. I think that they'll take the guy that's highest on their board. I don't think that they'll like look to fill Jeremy's position. Basically.
I'm with you. And Troy said, we talked to him on Monday and somebody asked him, does the draft dictate the rest of your offseason? And he looked at us and said, no, to be honest. And he wasn't lying.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I'm with you.
Okay. To Detroit. You have been making some very oblique Deandre Ayton references on social media. And you straight up said in your story that you published on The Athletic that you expect the Pistons will be chasing Deandre Ayton in free agency. Can you speak to the Deandre Ayton of this all here moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know he fits the timeline first and foremost. As much as I think both you and I really like Isaiah Stewart, I think you kind of maybe look at Boston and you can see a world where you could see like a Robert Williams. I mean, obviously Isaiah Stewart doesn't have the height that those two do, that Horford and Robert Williams do, but defensively, like that could be fun. And Isaiah Stewart has improved as a 3-point shooter. I think he's going to improve. Like, I'm still very much in that camp. Like, I think there's going to be a time where Isaiah Stewart very soon shoots 3 or 4 threes a game in his mid-30s. So I don't think that necessarily that like means Isaiah Stewart is like an afterthought or anything. I think DeAndre Ayton is a very good player who fits their timeline. The Pistons have the money to go get him. Phoenix is the situation there is weird, even though it seems like they're trying to keep him based on like the latest reports. And Detroit has an opportunity to make a splash, and this free agency class isn't very good. I think, like you said, like DeAndre Ayton, Anthony Simons are 2 guys that could make a run for. But DeAndre Ayton specifically, I mean, it just kind of makes a ton of sense. It gives the Pistons, it gives Cade a lob threat. It gives them a good defensive anchor to go with Isaiah Stewart, who's already a defensive anchor. I think that's just like it just makes sense. Like, it fits in every way possible. I don't know. Now, I don't know that they break the bank for Ayton. Like, maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, it's going to take a max. It's going to take $30 million a year to do it.
I wonder if they call. Okay, so my question to you is: do you think there is somebody that gives Ayton the 30? No question.
I think someone will give Ayton 30. Yeah, okay. I do.
I'd be curious.
I think.
I wonder if they have a walk. I'd be curious if Detroit has a walk away number. I don't think it's like by any means.
Yeah, I can see them being like, look, we'll give you 120 without raises, maybe like go like flat 30 or something like that.
Mhm.
I can see a world where they try to like implement a team op or a player option, uh, because they will want to make this as disadvantageous for Phoenix to match as possible.
Mhm.
They will add like all sorts of crazy trade kickers as well,
Yeah.
to make this as disadvantageous for Phoenix as possible. The thing that's interesting for me is now that they have opened this cap space, they can just offer DeAndre this deal and put pressure on Phoenix. Okay, are you really going to match?
Right.
Like,
Before it felt like if it was something was going to happen, Jerami Grant was probably going to be involved in a sign
it
and
would have
trade.
to be a sign and trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's not the case.
And look, maybe they will try. Maybe there will be like a sign and trade that occurs where Phoenix negotiates this, they open up a big trade exception,
Right.
etc. But I really wonder if Phoenix is going to get much back from Detroit. I'm very clear on this. If I was Phoenix, I would match everything for DeAndre and just retain him.
Mhm.
I think it's a bad idea for Phoenix to let him go. But I also worry now that, it seems like this is not going well with that relationship there. I also wonder if they're in a space where, like, is it almost like, here's a weird one. Is it possible that Detroit offers DeAndre the max?
Mhm.
They open up, they say, hey, we'll do a deal with you guys to open up a big trade exception.
Yeah.
And then could Charlotte then send Gordon Hayward into their trade exception that matches
Ooh.
that matches like the Ayton max?
And then the Suns get 13.
Maybe Suns get 15, maybe.
15.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they just take Hayward into that exception because like with a couple of seconds or something like that, or a future first, because they're not going to do much better than Gordon Hayward, I think, on a $30 million trade exception where you're just like bringing someone in. Right.
Yeah.
I
would definitely be rooting for, if I was Phoenix, be pushing for 13 or 15 to see if Mark Williams or Jalen Duren falls there, because might solve some problems. I don't think it gets you to where you want to go, but it makes losing Ayton a little bit more palpable.
Yeah. This is interesting now. Like there are some interesting constructions for Phoenix where you can make this work, even if it's just a trade exception that comes back and you make like a tangential deal to DeAndre Ayton getting a big, deal from Detroit, you opening up an enormous trade exception and then, having that filled immediately almost basically by someone. But I think you need to do that. If you're not matching DeAndre Ayton, you need to be willing to spend elsewhere. And that's what my worry is. Like, is Phoenix just going to spend elsewhere, or is Robert Sarver going to cheap out a little